Kombucha is a sweet, tangy, probiotic drink. Quite simply, it is sweet tea that is fermented with a culture. If you want to know more specifically how to make it or try to make it yourself, here you go. So you start with just making simple sweet tea. But what's important is knowing what proportions are needed to make this. For example, you don't want to make decaffeinated herbal low sugar tea because you need sugar to ferment. So there are some necessities for the culture to work and fermentation process to happen. So I start with making sweet tea, and I fill, this is one batch in a sun tea jar. This is going to end up making 6 bottles of kombucha, and I start with 3 quarts of sweet tea, which is made with 3 quarts filtered water. Bring it to a boil, dissolve in it 1 cup of sugar. I use organic cane sugar. Then I add 5 tea bags, let it steep for 12 to 15 minutes, take the tea bags out and let it cool. Now the tea bags, you really want caffeinated black tea, which really thrives the best with this culture. But I have I make about a 50-50 green tea, black tea mixture with the bags. And then you want to get it completely cool, basically room temperature, before you put it in this glass jar, because you don't want the glass to break, and if it's still hot, it'll kill your culture. So you made your tea, put it in your jar container, and then you're gonna put what's called a SCOBY. It stands for Symbiotic Culture of Bacteria and Yeast. You're gonna put your culture on top. It basically looks like a big, thick fungal mushroom. Put it on top, and you want to use a starter, which is at least a cup of tea from your last batch. I use 1 1/3. So put your tea in, put your SCOBY on top, a little bit of starter, and it fills this sun tea jar perfectly. And then I put a cloth over it with a rubber band because you want it to breathe and be exposed to air, yet you don't want bugs to get in it. And then you want to put this in a dark place at room temperature for 7 to 10 days. And everyone's different. There's so many environmental factors that'll affect this process. So it's great to start tasting it at about a week. So what I do, mine takes 8 days. So I get a straw and I clean it. I'll stick it in and do a taster, and you'll know if it's done if it's a little sweet and a little tangy. If it's real sweet, it hasn't fermented long enough. If it's really sour and tastes like vinegar, it's fermented too much, even though you can still use it. So mine is perfectly done right now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clean, you always want everything clean. So you clean your hands really well or put on gloves and clean your gloves. I'm gonna take the SCOBY out and set it in like a bowl with some starter for my next batch. So at least a cup, I'll do 1 1/3. And then I usually stir it up. There's gonna be some brown slimy things from the culture. I often just put that in the starter for the next batch. Don't let that gross you out. If you look at the store at the bottom of your kombucha bottles, you're gonna see some of it. It's just part of the process. Think slimy mushrooms. So take your SCOBY out. I usually stir it up, and what I used to do about 20 years ago when I made kombucha is I put this in the fridge and I drank a little bit of it every day. You can do that, you get all the health benefits from it, but it just doesn't taste too great. So I love store-bought kombucha that's flavored, so I've started doing a second fermentation where you flavor it. So I pour my kombucha in 6 bottles, that's how much this makes. Don't fill it all the way to the top, you need some room for some air. I fill it about up to here. And then you're gonna need to put something with some sort of sugar, carbohydrate in it to flavor it. I like to use some sort of fruit. You could use fresh, frozen. I'll tell you in a few minutes what I do and I've come up with. Then you're gonna put the lid on really tight, and you're going to set it aside or in the pantry for 72 hours. Then your second fermentation and flavoring is done, and you just put them in the fridge, drink it whenever you want. So now 1 SCOBY or culture will ferment really as much as you want. I also have a big jar that's in the pantry that's twice as big, so I can make a double. You could make even a triple batch, And when I set this in a bigger container, it's gonna grow and spread on the top of it. So it works just fine. It could affect the fermentation fine. time, it hasn't for me. So I use old kombucha bottles from the store and I just wash them out. You can use about any bottle you want. You want to use glass though. You can also order what are called growler bottles online, a little fancier. These. I've also used old salad dressings, salsa containers, even old liquor bottles. I don't use plastic because it's not a sturdy material and it could explode. Also, you don't want to forget about this and leave it on the counter for a week or two, go out of town, because it could explode and build up too much carbonation. So I've never had it happen. I'm very careful about how I make this, and you need to be. Other things, some people might think, oh my gosh, there's so much sugar in this, there's a cup of sugar. Not really. The culture eats up the sugar in the fermentation process and really brings down the sugar content. If you ever look at a bottle of kombucha, there's like 35 to 40 calories for the whole bottle, 8 to 10 carbs. That's less calorie and carbs and sugar than a small banana. So if someone tries to tell you that, they don't have their facts straight. Also, whenever you take out your SCOBY after you fermented it, you should end up with a mother SCOBY on top, your old SCOBY, and it grows a new one on the bottom. Mine usually grows more of a film. Sometimes I tear it off and throw it away, sometimes I don't, and I just keep using it. But if you do tear it off, if it's thick, I like to use the fresh baby SCOBY on the bottom, and then if you want to give another SCOBY to someone else to start it, you can. Remember to always have everything clean, a clean work surface, clean your hands, because you don't want some unwanted type of bacteria to get in here or it's going to grow and it could make you sick. That wouldn't be good. Speaking of, kombucha is probiotic, so it could do interesting things to your gut, cause some loose stools. Fermentation products are high in histamine, so it could give you a little headache or make you a little flushed. So kombucha has different actions on different people. And then lastly, my favorite way to flavor these, I make a fruit puree in the blender, and then I fill a small ice cube tray, freeze these, and then I keep bags of fruit puree cubes in the freezer so that I have like 8 to 10 flavors to choose from. And then the amount of fruit that I put in is about half of a small ice cube. It'd be like a little chunk of fruit. You can experiment with it. If you put a lot in there, it may ferment and cause too much carbonation. So if you ever open your bottles and they always bubble over and you lose half of it, you're probably putting too much sugar or fruit in it. So that's about it. Have fun trying it, experiment with different flavors. My personal favorites have probably been mojito, lychee, berry ginger, cranberry orange, and I just made peach hibiscus. So we'll see, and let me know if you try it out and have any comments. Research shows that clicking the thumbs up and subscribe button will make fingers healthy and strong, and besides, it's free.